Espresso Talks by Sphere Energy. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of Espresso Talks. Today I'm here with Oliver and Gianmarco, two of our AI engineers at Sphere, and I'm very excited to have them here and talk a little bit more about the battery validation process. But before we begin, maybe a quick introduction round from you guys?
Sure, yeah, I can get started. I'm Gianmarco and I'm a senior AI engineer at Sphere. I recently joined the company working mostly on the AI simulation projects. So we are working, as Hemi introduced, on towards battery validation and simulation of cells. And my background is in AI for scientific discovery. I mostly worked in the past with sensors, and now I'm in the battery world. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks. So I'm Oliver. I have a PhD in chemical engineering and chemistry. My background is therefore a bit more in the chemistry world. So I'm more tackling the physics-inspired models for battery validation.
Great, thank you so much. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're talking battery validation. In the previous episode, we talked with our data scientists about the amounts of data that we generate here in our test center and how difficult it is to deal with such big amounts of data. But today, we really want to dive deep into one topic that we only touched upon in the last episode, which is, as I mentioned, battery validation. I would love for you guys to introduce a little bit what battery validation involves, why it matters in the whole battery production cycle, and maybe also some of the major challenges.
Yeah, I can maybe start mentioning, yeah. So I believe for sure it's very connected to the topic of data, right? So the idea that we gather more and more data from our testing centers is of paramount importance for battery validation and cell validation. And the reason why validation is important is, of course, to make sure that whenever you're going to drive your car, it's not going to stop after a few kilometers. It's really a very important step in the process even of building more sophisticated appliances or cars. So of course, the topic here is really about making sure that you have a cell or a battery that will work in the way you expect, and of course is reliable enough to certain conditions. So depending on temperatures or variation of pressure, whatever you're gonna use your battery or car accordingly. So I think it's like a very important topic in the automotive industry, of course. And the challenge that that exists nowadays is, of course, in the extended validation processes, right? So these are very, very lengthy processes. It takes maybe years even to validate a battery or a technology. And of course, these may become the bottleneck in the development of cars, for instance. So that's why I believe we need to act.
Of course. I mean, you mentioned that it's a super lengthy process. Now, I'm just imagining maybe for some of our audience that doesn't really know how a battery cycle works or what happens to a battery before it's getting produced. Let's say there's a new technology that some researchers invented, and then let's say they're trying to produce this battery, go through the entire cycle, and they get to the battery validation. What would you say is the current amount of time that it takes before it can even hit the market?
So yeah, it usually is in the order of magnitude of months to years, actually. And also it's extensive testing because each cell needs to be tested at, let's say, different temperatures rigorously. So you have to cycle all of them at different conditions. For example, also different speed of how fast you can charge a battery and so on is getting more and more important with newer models of cars.
Yeah, we briefly touched upon that we have to validate a battery. How do you do this currently?
So yeah, I think as we mentioned, probably there is this process in which you really have to provide extensive testing for the battery under different conditions. So this requires also mounting the actual battery of cells in the cyclers or instruments that are used in order to record constantly data from the battery aging mechanism. So we really need to test or simulate the battery as if it's being operated in actually a car or another appliance. So The validation requires them to gather all the information at the end of the testing, comparing the data and understanding what conditions are passed, what fails, if there is an issue with the battery, what can we do differently, does it make sense even to discard the whole thing. So it's a little bit also of a trial and error process at the moment, so that's why, as Oli mentioned, it can take like months, years even to validate for one specific technology.
Okay, wow. I mean, that sounds pretty insane. And also what you mentioned before, Oliver, the amount of time before a battery can even hit the market and then even be used in the products is insane. Do you think there's any ways that maybe are being explored right now to do this faster or better?
I think this is where we wanted to go with Apex. This is that we use simulation as a tool to like lower the number of tests we do and get insights faster, so we can actually, after a couple of cycles, so maybe weeks of testing, we can predict how the remaining life of the battery would be if we would cycle it further.
You mentioned Apex. What's Apex?
I can go with this. So yeah, Apex is our AI simulation model. So we use this as a tool for simulating the behavior of the batteries, as we mentioned, under the different conditions and under different scenarios. And the idea is really just getting as input to our model, our prediction, the cycles that we actually measure in doing testing. So this actually comes from real data that you need to have anyhow, but only a few cycles or a few weeks of recording, and then simulate with our model the remaining cycles which the battery will be tested. And in this case, it is actually simulated, right? So the aim and the overall goal is in the end to predict the end of life. This is really the key metric, right, that we want to measure. We want to simulate the end of life of the battery without actually measuring it. So we simulate it.
And this is done with AI, you mentioned, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of hype around AI. Everyone knows that, everyone hears that. Do you personally believe this is actually gonna make it? Do you think this is not only hype?
Yeah, I mean, there has been more and more efforts in leveraging AI in different areas, and I think Oli and I, we are both really people that want to work in the scientific realm of these applications. So we have seen in healthcare or also in material development, food, and nutrition, there has been a lot of efforts in using and leveraging AI for supporting these kind of applications. We truly believe that there is an opportunity in the battery space, especially for battery validation, because now more and more the technologies are being provided to us, AI engineers, also consumers of the products, and that's why we believe it actually makes sense now to focus on also trying to find that niche of the application that can be the battery validation, because there is a huge opportunity for leveraging the new tools that we have been provided.
So basically you're saying the AI hype, yes, is real on the right use case, applied on the right.
Exactly, and battery validation is the right use case for sure.
That's a very nice sales pitch already. Okay, I mean, yeah, it's clear where the idea of simulating came from. You gave a very extensive background of why one should do that, and yeah, that battery validation right now simply is taking too long. Can you maybe give some examples, apart from time, what else the simulation that you're exploring could help with?
It could reduce the overall number of tests needed, so we can reduce the number of tests that usually are done by simulating some of them, let's say at different operation conditions, without running them physically. And this could save a huge number of tests in the end.
So not only about time, also the cost, also the burden on the testing facilities. So imagine like you have to work, one day is very effectively, like with all the equipment that is set and perfect for running experiments, and not, for months and years where you can actually face more issue also on the hardware side. And, this is very important.
No, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I'm imagining this like maybe, as you mentioned before as well, if there's an issue with a cell, you see it much earlier, and then you can also change something before testing the whole thing. Okay, amazing. I mean, so we said it could be faster, it would be more cost effective. Who do you think in the battery industry now this could apply to? Who could benefit from this specifically? Like, are we talking everyone? Are we talking small players, big players? What do you think?
Well, I think based on the experience that we are having at the moment, or what we actually see in the market, there is a lot of opportunity to have, a tool that can help businesses across different dimensions and also like different players in the game of, battery validation. We see for sure like the opportunities for actually test engineers, for people that really work nowadays with batteries on the cell validation. Of course, the simulation tools are not at all like replacement of people or of the process of testing, but it's really like support to the testing itself. So I believe I used to be also like a lab person, so I was working in the lab. I would have liked to have even more automation in my experiments in what I was doing. So I see like direct impact for the test engineers in, getting feedback from what they are doing, and in overall like for companies that really want to push new technologies out. So they need to have very fast decisions on the battery that they test. So I think there is a need of, even different stakeholders in working together in order to make the simulation integrating into the pipelines.
Okay. And maybe going back to like the data you need for this model, what kind of data do you need? We talked, as I said, with our data scientists, Liam and Victor, about how they harmonize the data, how they clean the data. What kind of data do you work with? Like, can you take the first data that comes out of the cycler, or does maybe what Liam and Victor are doing help you guys?
I leave this to Oli. This is
For sure, we need some sort of data cleaning beforehand. It always needs to be as clean as possible, I would say, and also some other factors like more like static information about the cell is also required as an input, so we can make an accurate decision based on, like, let's say, cathode chemistry or so on. But overall, I think the most important part is still this time series data that comes from the first N cycles that we use for as an input for our model to predict the remaining life of the battery.
So maybe just to touch upon that again, what our data scientists are doing beforehand is not useless.
No, it's almost a requirement for having like the whole data pipeline to make reliable model architectures. So you have to have some harmonized, standardized data, so the model learns the same on this.
So this is like, I think for AI or data-driven models is like so important, because they are hungry of, they really want to to get data more and more. And so I think it's, if they are not clean data, like, it's the usual story, garbage in, garbage out. So we totally believe there is a need like for making sure that we are using the proper data, clean data in the way we expect. And yeah, I think the support from the ADO team is paramount importance for us. Yeah.
That's good to hear, at least. Maybe going back to the AI hype for a second, you said you think it is essential, you think it will be worth it, especially for this use case, battery validation. Now, I mean, AI has been around for quite some time. Batteries have been around for also now quite some time. Why do you think this was never, or has this ever been tried, or why not, if not, in the way that you're explaining it?
For sure, like with the recent newer model architectures that came out in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, there was a shift also in like architectural things from like just purely ML, like machine learning side of the story, but also like the data source that we need. So we need a lot of data to train these newer architectures, and we have here the testing facility to get this data like in high quality. So I think there was many pieces that needed to come together to finish basically the puzzle of having a model that is reliable in predicting the remaining useful life of a battery.
Yeah, and if I can add on that, I mean, I think like we have seen a lot in the past the trend of, developing more general AI paradigm. So there was in the past the idea, having a unique model that solves, healthcare, battery maybe validation, and so on and so forth. So many applications at the same time. But it turns out, and this is the latest trend, that this is not true. Like it's not real. We need really business-oriented models in order to solve specific challenges. So we need really to have models that go really in the direction that we want them to be. So while in the past, maybe the time series or battery data was like one of the modalities to be explored, so maybe it was not too much of a focus. Now, if you want to go for AI in this space, we need to develop a specific model.
Much more niche.
Exactly.
Yeah, so basically creating a whole new paradigm.
Yes, that's why we are here.
Creating a new world, I see. Okay. Maybe about the model a little bit. What kind of questions do you think you or your clients that would use Apex could solve now, answer now that they couldn't before, for example?
Well, I mean, the one that comes to my mind immediately, because it's really something we are familiar with, is the topic of testing, for instance, the batteries under different temperatures or operating conditions. So far, in order to get, a proper answer about, the different behaviors under different thermal conditions, we would have required to actually measure or test that battery, right? But then with our simulation tool, what we are trying to provide is really a way in order to bypass maybe testing of some of those conditions, like just giving as input the behavior of the cell at certain temperature. We can also simulate the behavior at a different temperature without actually testing it.
So like also maybe the edge cases that...
Exactly, like this is something, sometimes those tests are done to really validate all the possible scenarios in which the battery is tested, maybe also the ones that are not so common. We believe like with our model, we want to give a tool, as I said, like to get the response already in advance before actually testing the different condition or behavior.
Okay, I see. For all the battery validation experts out there, maybe, how does this change their day-to-day work if we look at it? Because obviously we've heard also a lot of skepticism in terms of replacing workforce. And for all these experts, what do you think?
I truly think like the physical testing will always have its place in the battery validation process, because there is some sort of like reliability that you have to achieve for SICs. But the whole process, as Gianmarco mentioned before, it's just about accelerating your decision making. Saying, okay, that you see that this sample of battery fails, maybe you're testing earlier than it actually fails, allows you to make other decisions to not have then in your business process like delays later on because the validation maybe failed on a stage.
And I think you said it also very nicely earlier, like that it should be more of a support system rather than a replacement or a magic that comes and solves everything for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, every day a test engineer comes to the office, they have a design of experiment, right? So they need to understand which exactly combination of parameters to test, right? There is all this process in which you are not supported by anyone else if not your experience. So AI and the foundation models can support even designing these experiments, like which experiment is better you will perform today in order to get to a faster decision in the long term, right? So this is really where we believe this kind of technology can be disruptive.
I think that's super insightful. Thank you so much. Maybe two last questions to wrap it up. I give you the choice who answers which one. What do you think are the next steps for Sphere in this realm? And also maybe what do you think are the next steps for other players? Now, let's talk OEMs or other players. What do you think?
So I can maybe go for the Sphere one for the first one. I think one of the components we want to focus on more is like including some physical bounds to our model to more realistically even further predict the behavior of a battery and bound it to the physics of the real world, so the model reflects this even better as a next step.
Yeah, I believe in general other players maybe taking inspiration also from what Sphere is doing or our work. I think there is a need to be aware of new technologies that exist today to support testing. And one of them, we believe, is AI simulation, of course. So of course, there is a need that all the people that actually use the technologies that are traditional technologies nowadays should be getting familiar with the latest trends in the developments in this field, like AI simulation. So for sure, we envision, or we believe there is a day in which people will actually maybe try it out, test a little bit how these technologies work. Does it really help my project? How does it work? How can we improve it? In the end, we are all players in the same game, so it really makes sense to co-develop something together to make sure that this is really going to get an impact for all the stakeholders.
Sure. Thank you so much, guys. That was very, very great. And for you guys, if you're interested in hearing a little bit more how we are planning to change this traditional development cycle into a more iterative and intelligent cycle, then why don't you get in touch with us? The guys are very happy to chat a little bit more about this. And otherwise, I'm happy to hear you in the next episode of Espresso Talks.